Hello friend. I want to tell you about the Citroen C4 car. The Citroen C4 is an attractive alternative to other compacts of similar vintage, mainly due to its very low price. The car stands out with its styling and is French, which is why it has lost a lot of value. Opinions about it vary, but in reality a lot depends on the owner and his approach to servicing the car. Unlike its predecessor, not only the nomenclature has changed, but also the range of body styles. While the XR was sold in 3 and 5-door versions and as an estate car and minivan, the C4 was available as a 5-door hatchback and a coupe, which were quite different from it. It can be successfully called a 3-door hatchback, but like few models in this segment, the name coupe is due to the shape of the body. It was not until 2006 that a more practical family version debuted, but not a station wagon, but a minivan called Picasso. Sedans are a great rarity. The biggest revolution was the C4's cabin. It's not particularly spacious, especially in the second row. Incidentally, in terms of spaciousness, the C4 was a step back from the XR, and the boot capacity dropped from a respectable 440 liters to a mere 320 liters. In reality, it turns out that the technical data does not reflect how this boot can be used, but the fact is that the difference is still huge. As in the area of the dashboard, which looked extremely modern, even futuristic, at the time. Even today, with minor improvements, it could impress, but Citroen has returned to traditional solutions in the second generation of the C4. If the car has navigation, then we have another one. The interior has been done well and the car is comfortable to drive. The same can be said about the suspension, which has changed its characteristics to more neutral and provides the right amount of comfort and safety at the same time. Structurally, there are no revelations in it. These are traditional solutions known from compacts. Engines. A good range of engines, both petrol and diesel, was used for this model. The basic petrol engines 1.416 volts and 1.616 V have power of 90 and 110 HP. Interestingly, the 1.6 HDI diesel also offers such parameters, depending on the version. The 2-liter units are petrol with power of 140 HP and diesel HDI with power of 136 or 140 HP. The most powerful engine in the range is a 2-liter petrol engine, powering the sports version of the VTS and generating 180 HP. Only after the facelift did new 1.6-liter petrol engines appear under the hood, in naturally aspirated and supercharged versions. The VTI and THP units, developed together with BMW, became famous for their good parameters and failure rate. It is hard to honestly recommend these last engines, although they were improved towards the end of production. A much better solution will be the proven 1.6 and 2.0L petrol engines. The latter in particular deserves attention as a reliable and durable unit, although electronic failures do occur. It has adequate power, but can use a lot of petrol. For economical drivers, the 1.6-liter engine will be better. The smallest 1.4-liter has only 90 HP and does not offer good performance, but it will also cope in a pinch. If you like torque, you can choose one of the diesels. In fact, each of them is good, although not without its flaws. We recommend the 90 horsepower 1.6 HDI version. This engine has no dual-mass flywheel, DPF filter and is equipped with a fixed geometry turbocharger, which is much more resistant to deposits and generally more durable, as well as cheaper to repair. The more powerful 1.6 HDI 110 HP diesel has these features, but it is still an economical engine. With proper driving, you can get by with fuel consumption in just 5.5 L, 100 kilometers. The large 2.0 HDI diesel engines are very good, more durable than the 1.6 and definitely more dynamic, but on the other hand, they are not as economical and can be considered a triumph of style over substance. Of course, we recommend them, but rather for driving on the road. It is also worth mentioning the automatic gearboxes, which are divided into full automatics, 4 and 5 speed, and semi-automatics, 6 speed. We do not recommend the latter. The opinions about unreliable French cars are mainly due to unreliable electronics. This is no different, although it cannot be said that the Citroen C4 is a reliable car. BSI computers break down, but not as much as in older models. Faults occur less frequently, but they are compensated by the rich equipment of some versions. The more electronics, the more minor faults that bother the owner. The central locking fails, which in turn results in the car opening. It's a good thing there aren't many amateurs on the C4. In winter, the air conditioning panel and some switches on the dashboard may fail or work slower. The electronics controlling the engines are definitely more troublesome. Here, you have to expect a failure of the exhaust gas cleaning system of HDI engines. You have to know that after a mileage of about 150,000 kilometers, the FAP filter needs to be replaced. In the meantime, you have to refill a special agent for its operation called eolase. This is another operation that may require a visit to the service and increase operating costs. Sticking with diesels, you have to reckon with the failure of the EGR valve, injectors and some sensors. The injectors of the 1.6 HDI 110 HP engine are particularly delicate, but they are not expensive to repair either. It is worth remembering to replace the timing belt and accessory drive belt and the timing chain connecting the shafts immediately after purchase. It is best to replace all the rollers along with the belts, because the pulleys can become unvulcanized, which ends with another repair. The better the car is serviced, the longer it will drive. This rule always works, but it is not always accepted by users of 1.6 HDI engines, and these can withstand 300,000 kilometers without any problems or failures. All that is needed is proper servicing. The 2.0 HDI diesel requires much less care, but it also has a FAP filter and elements such as EGR or a dual-mass flywheel. The turbocharger lasts a long time, but pulleys and flow meters fail. Contrary to appearances, HDI diesels, despite several typical faults, are very durable and it is hard not to recommend them. And what about petrol engines? It would be a sin to nitpick here, provided that we are not talking about facelifted versions. The VTI engine struggles mainly with a faulty timing drive, while the THP also has a high demand for oil. It is a pity that they completely replaced older generation engines, which were durable and trouble-free. If there is an occasional problem with the controller or ignition coil, that is all you can worry about. Generally, you can assume that if you buy a pre-facelift car, it is better to choose petrol, cheaper to operate and less worn, with a lower potential for costly breakdowns. On the other hand, it is better to buy a post-facelift Citroen C4 with a diesel engine. If you've already been discouraged by this model, now there's only good news left. Mechanically, the car is durable. The suspension is a simple design that requires a bit more attention than, for example, in German cars, but is just as cheap to run. The rear beam has separately mounted springs and cheap shock absorbers, but it can be noisy. Often users drive with harmless knocks, because detecting a fault is not so much related to an inspection as to replacing all the rubber elements. Apparently you can get used to it. It is worth buying good quality brake discs, because there are many weak counterfeits on the market, and even originals have a short life. The steering system copes well with use on European roads, but in cars after 150-200,000 kilometers the rack and pinion may have slight play. Citroen has opted for an electro-hydraulic power steering system, which is not particularly unreliable, but the steering angle sensor can fail to work. It also happens that the power steering does not engage after starting the engine because the mechanism does not receive a signal about its necessity. C4 users do not have to worry about corrosion. It appears on the exhaust system, but the body is generally well protected, as is the case with PSA brands. The interior wears normally, so do not be fooled that significant abrasion of the upholstery or buttons is the Frenchman effect, and not the high mileage hidden by the dealer. The Citroen C4 can be a very attractive alternative to the ubiquitous Opels, Fords and Volkswagens. Unfortunately, The low purchase cost is compensation for the high cost of operation. If someone pays a lot of attention to the full efficiency of the car, they must visit the service quite often to diagnose and eliminate errors appearing on the instrument panel. Minor issues are usually not expensive to repair, but their diagnosis can cost a lot. That is why we advise you to find a good mechanic after the purchase, preferably a PSA specialist. Only such a person will know all the nuances of this model. This is not a threat, but something that you will certainly figure out yourself after a year, maybe two. Unfortunately, it is difficult to recommend authorized services that do not have a good reputation. There is no shortage of workshops that specialize not only in servicing, but also in spare parts for Citroen and Peugeot cars. Regular visits to specialists will convince you that buying a Citroen C4 was a good idea. There is absolutely no problem with parts, both replacements and originals. Original parts do not have to be purchased at authorized stations, because specialist stores have a wide range of such products at lower prices. There is a rule that French original parts are not better than replacements from reputable manufacturers, and there is a lot of truth in this. However, when you have to buy something unusual, you are in a much better situation than owners of Mitsubishi, Mazda or Toyota. Buying a Citroen C4 would not be a good solution if not for its attractive prices. In the situation we have on the market, the Citroen C4 is not only a good idea, but in some cases an excellent solution. We recommend the car especially to people who do not have the appropriate amount of cash for the purchase and the starter package. It is definitely a better idea to buy a Citroen for $4,500 from the end of production, with a reserve of $1,200 minus $1,400 for post-purchase service, than to put all the money into an older Volkswagen Golf or Honda Civic and count on the fact that the car will not generate any expenses for the next few months. What car do we recommend? Preferably a facelifted one, from 2009-2010, with a 1.6 HDI engine and low documented mileage for around $3,600 minus $4,000. If you prefer petrol, it is better to choose a car before the facelift. A good choice will be to buy a 3-door version, especially with the most powerful engine in the VTS standard or the limited version, by Loeb. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.